The night reeked of smoke and secrets. I've seen my share of fires, but this one felt different. The flames had already lost their roar when I arrived, tamed by exhausted firemen, but the warehouse still stood like a blackened coffin under the moon. I lit a cigarette. The taste of ash was already in my mouth, but habit's a cruel master. I watched the smoke curl and wondered how many sins were hiding behind those scorched walls. They led me inside. The air was thick, heavy, like breathing through a shroud. And then I saw it, what was left of him. A body, burned down to a brittle husk, crumpled among the ruins. They said it was Zahid, pillar of the community, clean reputation, respectable, the kind of man people swore by in daylight and gossiped about in the dark. But death has a way of burning the polish off. I crouched by what was left of him. The fire had done its job well, too well. But even in ruins, something about it stank of intention. A man doesn't just burn like that, not in a locked warehouse, not with the doors chained from the outside. That's when I found him. A door at the back, scorched, locked, forced open by firemen, and inside, a boy, small, fragile, covered in soot, but untouched by the flames. Alive, but the life in his eyes, it was gone. He sat in the corner, knees to his chest, staring at nothing. I've seen fear before, but this wasn't fear. This was hell. A kind of silence that screams louder than words ever could. I knelt beside him. "Son, what's your name?" Nothing. Not a blink, not a twitch. Just those hollow eyes staring through me, past me, into some nightmare he couldn't crawl out of. A living witness, but locked in his own mind. I knew then this wasn't just a fire, it was a message. Someone wanted the flames to do more than kill. They wanted them to scar, to torture, to silence. The victim was Zahid, everyone's golden boy, but the city whispers had a different tune. A brother named Nasir, quick-tempered, envious. An inheritance dispute that had poisoned blood thicker than water. And then Fariha, Zahid's wife. Soft-spoken, quiet, too quiet. In my line of work, silence is never innocence. The boy was the key, the only one who'd seen the truth. But the truth was locked behind those glassy eyes, and I needed to find a way to break in. So I did what I always do. I lit another cigarette, let the smoke fill my lungs, and promised myself one thing. I was going to drag the truth out of this fire, even if it burned me alive. The city has a way of holding its breath after a crime like this. People walk slower, they talk softer, their eyes linger a second too long, then dart away like guilty birds. It's not fear of the police, it's fear of the truth. Truth rattles communities harder than fire ever could. I started with Zahid's story. On paper, he was the kind of man you build a statue for. Respected merchant, gave to the mosque, never missed a Friday prayer, held his head high in public. But I don't trust paper. It burns too easily. The whispers told a different tale. His brother, Nasir, they called him hot-blooded, reckless, the kind of man who'd pick a fight with his own reflection if it looked at him wrong. They fought over land, over inheritance. Zahid got the bigger share, Nasir got the bitterness. Every tea stall in the city knew their feud. A story as old as Cain and Abel. It would have been easy to pin the fire on Nasir. Too easy. Which is exactly why I didn't. Then there was Faria, Zahid's wife, a shadow of a woman, always at his side, head bowed, voice hushed. People said she was loyal, dutiful, but I've been around long enough to know the quiet ones carry the heaviest storms. I watched her at the funeral. Her eyes were dry, too dry. Grief is a river, and hers looked like a desert. She played her part, accepted condolences, murmured prayers. But something in her silence made my skin itch. I went back to the boy. Imran, they told me later, Nasir's son. That twist alone was enough to sour the air. What was Nasir's son doing locked in that warehouse with Zahid burning just outside the door? I sat with him, hour after hour. No words, no cries, just that stare, like he was still watching the flames dance behind his eyelids. So I turned to science, called in a psychologist. We built a room, dark, silent. Then we fed it the fire, the crackle of wood, the hiss of smoke, the faint sting in the air. At first, nothing. Just the boy's shallow breath. Then his hands trembled, his lips quivered, and suddenly a scream ripped through the room like a bullet. "Don't burn him!" The silence shattered. My heart jumped. That one cry told me two things. One, the boy had seen it all. Two, Zahid's death wasn't an accident. It was a killing. A burning meant to hurt more than flesh. But the question clawed at me. Who was the him the boy was begging for? Zahid? Himself? Or someone else trapped in the fire of that night? I'd left the session with my lungs tight, my head heavy. Lit another cigarette, let the smoke curl up to the ceiling, and thought of the word the boy had given me. Burn. Someone had turned a warehouse into an oven. Someone had locked a child inside to stew in terror. This wasn't just murder, this was sadism. And I was going to find the hand that struck the match. I've always said a crime scene whispers, but suspects, they sing. Some croon their innocence, some scream their rage, some hum a little too smoothly. And that's when you know the tune is false. First stop, Nasir. Hothead, black sheep. The kind of man you find at a chai stall at midnight, not in the mosque at dawn. He sat across from me, eyes darting, jaw tight. "Tell me about the fire," I said. "I don't know nothing about no fire," he spat. His voice was rough, angry, but anger's cheap. Too easy to fake. I leaned in. "Your son was there, Nasir, locked in a room, staring at flames meant to cook him alive. You expect me to believe you didn't know?" His face cracked. For a second, I saw something flicker in his eyes. Fear. Maybe guilt, but not the kind I was hunting. It was the fear of a father, not the twitch of a killer. "My boy, Imran." His voice broke just for a breath. "I swear on my mother's grave, Malik Sahib, I didn't even know he was there." He ranted about Zahid, called him greedy, selfish, a thief of blood inheritance. But every curse was laced with grief. The man hated his brother, yes, but hate doesn't always light a match. Sometimes it just smolders, choking itself on smoke. I left him stewing in his own bitterness and turned my gaze where it really belonged, Faria. She welcomed me into her home with a face carved from marble. Her voice was soft, but her eyes had edges. "Such tragedy," she murmured. "Zahid was a good man. He didn't deserve this." I studied her hands, steady, too steady. A grieving widow's hands should tremble, should clutch, should twist in agony. Hers were folded neatly, like she was hosting tea. "You and Zahid, were you happy?" I asked. A simple question. Sometimes the simplest ones cut the deepest. She smiled, thin, cold. "Happiness is what Allah gives, Malik Sahib. I accepted what was written for me. Dodging without moving, hiding in plain sight. That's the art of liars." I left her house with the taste of ash in my mouth. I didn't trust her, but trust is a currency in short supply, and evidence was even shorter. Back at the station, I spread the puzzle on my desk. Zahid, the corpse, burned clean. Nasir, the angry brother, with motive, but not the nerve. Fariha, the widow with silence too sharp to ignore. And Imran, the boy who had seen hell and carried its flames in his eyes. I lit another cigarette, watched the smoke curl into the fan. The city outside hummed with its usual sins, but in my mind, only one question burned. Who locked the boy in that room? Because the one who caged him was the one who struck the match. Imran's silence was a maze. Every glance, every shiver, every half movement was a clue if you knew how to read it. I spent nights in that room with him, smoke curling from my cigarette, my notebook open, trying to map the shadows in his mind. At first, nothing. Just his blank stare, eyes wide, pupils like dark wells. Then, tiny sparks. The smell of burning wood made him flinch. The hiss of a lighter made his hands tremble. A whispered word, Zahid. And he jolted as if the air itself carried flames. It was a language of terror, a map into code. I followed it, patient, methodical, like a hunter tracking a ghost. Piece by piece, he gave me the night. I pressed. A small confession leaked from a servant. Fariha had argued with Zahid about inheritance. She had been restless, nervous, and yes, she had asked about locks, keys, timing. I lit another cigarette and letting the smoke curl up to the ceiling, tasting the city's night. The fire, the boy, Zahid, the inheritance, it all pointed to one person. I knew it, and I knew the moment I confronted her, the air would crack like dry wood. I stepped into Fariha's house one last time. Night had swallowed the city, leaving only streetlights casting long, hungry shadows. I lit a cigarette, the glow illuminating her face, calm, serene, too serene. "Fariha," I said, voice low, even. "We need to talk about the fire, about Zahid, about the boy." Her eyes didn't flinch. She offered tea. I declined. The air thickened, heavy with unspoken truths. I laid out the pieces on her table like a chessboard. Imran, locked in a room, dreaming at the smell of fire. The copper key. Witnesses seeing her near the warehouse that night. Her arguments with Zahid. Her smile was faint, almost amused. "And what, Malik Sahib, do you think this means?" I let the silence stretch, let the smoke curl around us like a phantom. Let her feel it, the tightening noose. Then slowly she spoke. Her voice was calm, deliberate. "Yes, I did it." The words didn't hit me like a bullet. No, it was worse. It was her calmness, her ability to strip away all pretense of innocence with one breath. "I wanted it all," she confessed. His money, his freedom. Nasir, he was weak. I knew he would help me if I whispered the right lies. The fire, the boy, it was supposed to be perfect, invisible, a clean slate. I watched her hands. No tremble, no guilt, only the satisfaction of someone who believed they were untouchable. I lit another cigarette. In this city, guilt is a luxury. Fear is currency. And Faria, she had spent it all thinking she could buy silence. But the city remembers, and the law remembers, and I remember. I told her what she already knew, that I had evidence, witnesses, Imran's testimony, the key, the trail of smoke and deceit that led straight to her door. By the time the police came, she was quiet, not pleading, not crying, just quiet. A woman stripped bare, facing the consequences of her fire. And as I walked out into the city's night, the air tasted of ash and justice. Imran was safe. Zahid's name would not be forgotten. And the fire that burned through more than wood, more than flesh, had finally met its match. I flicked my cigarette into the gutter, watching it sizzle out. In this city, hell walks quietly. But sometimes, if you're patient, you catch it before it spreads.